Well, before we get too far along, you've got to understand economists, and probably the best way to do this is with a joke. There's two guys in a balloon, and they're hopelessly lost, and they see a guy on the ground, and they get a little closer, and they say, can you tell us where we are? And the guy looks up and says, you're in a balloon. And the one guy says to the other, he must be an economist. His information is 100% accurate and useless. I tend to share the opinions of the guests that were here a minute ago. I think that we have been taken for a little bit of an extreme ride, I guess, by the press when it comes to this recession. I keep hearing people reference this as the worst recession since the 1930s, or the Peloponnesian Wars, or whenever. I mean, it's all for effect. And not only is this a recession that looks more like the one in the 80s, only not as bad, it's not as bad as the one in the 90s, and it's about like the one we had at the beginning of this decade. So it's not that we haven't been here before, and it's not that it isn't a serious situation, but it is not the insurmountable task that has tended to be depicted, I think, in the press. And I echo also the comments on how we get out of this is largely up to the manufacturing base of this country. Some of the comments that were made earlier about the importance of the manufacturing process and how much of it we still dominate the world today. We still account for 45% of the value of manufacturing in the world. And that if you took the GDPs of China, the UK, Germany, and Japan, and laid them on top of the United States, and anybody that saw my slides earlier saw those, we're bigger. All those countries, we're bigger than all four of them. So it's hard sometimes to listen to the negativity, because it seems to be a passion for finding the worst. And one of the things that I like about working with manufacturers is, as a group, this is not an industry that sees a problem and throws up its hands in despair. For the most part, it again reminds me of another stupid joke. The optimist sees the glass as half full, the pessimist sees it as half empty, the engineer and the manufacturer just thinks you have the wrong glass for the amount of water that you have on hand.
You talked about the ill wind does nobody any good.
Right.
And as a result of, going into a recession may create some opportunities on the other end.
Well, there's a reason they call us the dismal science. Economists see silver linings in other people's dark clouds. And we tend to look at recessions as kind of positive things. One, we become very popular. So at least from a personal point of view, at least as long as the recession lasts, we're suddenly in demand. And then the economy improves and we go back to our much-deserved obscurity. But the other aspect of a recession is that it changes some of the sort of detrimental dynamics. We've been run through a period where, frankly, a lot of us were seeing that people didn't value their jobs very much. There wasn't a lot of loyalty to the employers. One of the things that may come out of this recession is I may actually get what I order at a fast food place someday. People tend to start taking their jobs more seriously. People begin to really value, I think, their role, and they value the companies they work for. They begin to pay more attention to the sort of things that make their company successful or not successful. I've watched some of our clients really just experience a different attitude. It's almost, in a sense, the way that people rally during a crisis. Your company is stressed, everybody knows that the economy is not doing very well. People begin to start paying attention to the little things. They start trying to say, what can I do to help that company succeed? On a bigger scale, you simply get opportunities, and this is kind of a harsh way of looking at this, but during a recession, the non-competitive companies emerge. You begin to see who isn't very good at this, and you begin to see companies that have slipped in some way or the other. They go out of business first, and when they go, they leave consumers behind. They leave market share behind. They leave areas behind. And if you're paying attention to who's in trouble and why, it creates an opportunity for the companies that are doing well. You're even things like banks. This is a recession caused by the banks, large banks that went off in very strange directions. But what's now happening is those regional banks and those small town banks that everybody kind of laughed at and said, why aren't you involved in all this, you know? And they're saying, because we think it's stupid. They're now strong. They're the ones that have the money. And they're turning to the manufacturing community and saying, you know, we're still here. We're still functioning. And frankly, we don't trust very many other people, but we kind of trust manufacturers because they've got something of value. Now, granted, the banks are also reacting to the fact that you have expensive machines with which to collateralize a loan. But it begins to be a little bit more direct, and you start to find interactions that you didn't find even as recently as 3 or 4 years ago.